Welcome to my channel. Before you do anything else, answer one question honestly. What if the biggest reason you still can't speak English has nothing to do with grammar, vocabulary, or talent? Stay with me until the end because today's story might completely change the way you think about learning English. Somewhere in the world right now, someone who knew less English than you a year ago is confidently speaking with people from different countries. They are not smarter than you. They did not discover a secret book or a magical shortcut. They simply built one powerful habit that changed everything. Today, I want to share the story of Ethan, an ordinary young man who believed he would never become fluent. Every time he opened his mouth to speak English, his heart raced. His palms became sweaty, his mind went blank, and the words he had studied for months disappeared. He thought he was failing, but he was actually standing at the beginning of an incredible journey. One rainy evening, Ethan sat beside his bedroom window, watching the drops of water slide down the glass. His English notebook was open, filled with hundreds of vocabulary words, grammar notes, and practice exercises. Yet, despite all those pages, he still couldn't hold a simple conversation. Frustrated, he closed the notebook and whispered, "Maybe English isn't for me." At that exact moment, his grandfather quietly entered the room carrying two small flower pots. One plant was green and healthy, the other looked weak and dry. His grandfather placed both pots on the table and smiled. "Do you know why one plant is growing and the other isn't?" Ethan shook his head. "Because one received a little water every day," his grandfather replied, "while the other received a bucket of water only once every few weeks." Ethan stared at the plants in silence. His grandfather continued, "Learning is exactly the same. Small daily effort always beats occasional hard work." Those words stayed in Ethan's mind all night. The next morning, instead of studying for 3 exhausting hours, he made a different promise. He would practice English for only 15 focused minutes every day without missing a single day. His first lesson was incredibly simple. He looked around his room and named everything in English: chair, window, desk, computer, backpack, door. Then he created short sentences. "The chair is blue. The window is open. My backpack is on the floor." The sentences were easy, but for the first time, he actually spoke them aloud. At first, it felt strange, almost embarrassing, even though nobody else was there. But after a few days, those simple sentences began to flow more naturally. His fears slowly became smaller while his confidence quietly became stronger. One afternoon, Ethan visited a small coffee shop near his home. Normally, he would order in his native language, but this time he took a deep breath and said, "Good afternoon. I'd like a cup of coffee, please." His pronunciation wasn't perfect, but the barista smiled warmly and answered in English. Ethan understood every word. The conversation lasted less than a minute, but to him it felt like winning a championship. Walking home with his coffee, he realized something powerful. Confidence doesn't appear before action. Confidence grows because of action. That realization changed the way he approached every challenge. Instead of asking, "Am I ready?" he started asking, "What small step can I take today?" Every day he answered that question with another simple action. He described the weather in English. He talked about his plans while preparing breakfast. He listened to short English stories during his evening walk. None of these activities felt extraordinary on their own, but together they created remarkable progress. Without noticing it, English slowly became part of his daily life rather than just another school subject. Weeks passed, and the impossible started becoming possible. Ethan found himself thinking in simple English phrases while shopping, exercising, and even dreaming about his future. He realized that fluency was never built through giant leaps. It was built through thousands of tiny, consistent steps that almost seemed too small to matter. And that was only the beginning of a journey that would challenge his courage, strengthen his character, and completely transform the way he saw himself. The next morning, Ethan woke up before the sun had fully risen. Instead of reaching for his phone, he stood by the window and quietly described everything he could see in English. "The sky is bright, the birds are flying, the air feels fresh. Today is a new opportunity." His sentences were simple, but every word carried a new sense of confidence. For the first time, English no longer felt like a school subject. It felt like a companion following him through his day. As he walked to work, he challenged himself to think only in English for 5 minutes. It was difficult at first. His mind kept returning to his native language, but each time it happened, he gently guided himself back. The trees are tall, the traffic is busy, I am walking with confidence. Those small exercises strengthened his thinking little by little. A week later, he noticed something surprising. When he heard English in a video, he understood more than before. He wasn't translating every sentence anymore. His brain was beginning to recognize patterns naturally. That discovery filled him with hope because it proved that consistent practice was working. One evening, Ethan met an elderly man at the local library who noticed the English book he was reading. The man smiled and asked, "Are you learning English?" Ethan nodded proudly and answered in simple English. The conversation lasted only a few minutes, but each sentence felt easier than the last. Before leaving, the man said something Ethan would never forget. Confidence is not the reward for success. Confidence is the reward for trying again and again. Those words echoed in Ethan's mind throughout the week. He wrote them on a small piece of paper and placed it above his desk where he could see it every morning. Whenever doubt appeared, he read the sentence aloud and reminded himself that every attempt mattered. Soon he created a new daily routine. Every morning he practiced speaking for 10 minutes. Every afternoon he learned 5 useful expressions. Every evening he reviewed what he had used during the day instead of memorizing endless vocabulary lists. His progress became steady because his practice became purposeful. Months passed, and the people around him began noticing the difference. Friends who had once heard him hesitate now saw someone who spoke with calm determination. His pronunciation improved naturally because he practiced aloud instead of silently reading. His listening became stronger because he listened every day. Most importantly, his fear became smaller because courage had replaced hesitation. Ethan finally understood that fluency is built through thousands of ordinary moments. Every sentence spoken, every mistake corrected, and every conversation attempted added another brick to the foundation of his confidence. Looking back, he realized that the hardest part had never been grammar or vocabulary. The hardest part was believing that improvement was possible. Once he changed that belief, everything else slowly followed. He no longer measured success by perfection. Instead, he measured it by progress. If he could express one more idea today than yesterday, he considered the day successful. If he understood one more paragraph than last week, he celebrated that achievement. Those small victories kept his motivation alive. He learned that success grows quietly before anyone else can see it. Like a seed beneath the soil, your efforts may seem invisible at first, but they are creating strong roots beneath the surface. One day those roots become confidence, and that confidence becomes fluency. Ethan smiled as he closed his notebook that evening. For the first time, he no longer wondered if he would become fluent. Instead, he asked himself a different question. How much stronger will I be if I continue this habit for another year? That question filled him with excitement because he finally understood that his future depended not on talent, but on the small choices he made every single day. Every word he spoke carried him closer to the confident English speaker he had always wanted to become, and deep inside, he knew that his greatest breakthrough was still waiting just ahead. Every successful journey reaches a moment when progress finally becomes visible, and for Daniel, that moment arrived on an ordinary afternoon. He was sitting in a quiet park, reading a simple English story, when a traveler approached him and politely asked for directions in English. Months earlier, Daniel would have apologized and walked away, believing his English was not good enough. This time was different. He took a deep breath, smiled, and answered slowly. His sentences were not perfect, but they were clear. The traveler thanked him warmly and continued on his way. Daniel stood there for a few seconds, amazed at what had just happened. He had carried on a real conversation without fear. As he walked home, he realized something important. Confidence is never built in one dramatic moment. It is built through hundreds of quiet moments that nobody else sees. Every morning, he had practiced simple sentences. Every evening, he had reviewed new words. Every time he chose to speak instead of staying silent, he had become a little stronger. Those small actions had quietly transformed him into someone who believed in his own voice. From that day forward, Daniel stopped focusing on what he could not do and started appreciating everything he had already achieved. He noticed that he understood songs more easily. He enjoyed watching English videos without feeling overwhelmed. Reading simple books became relaxing instead of stressful. Even his dreams about the future became bigger because he knew English could open doors he had never imagined. One evening, he wrote a sentence in his notebook. That became his personal motto. Small progress every day creates extraordinary results. He read those words every morning before beginning his practice, reminding himself that greatness is never built overnight. Weeks turned into months, and people around him began asking how his English had improved so much. They expected him to reveal a secret method or an expensive course, but Daniel simply smiled and said, "I never stopped practicing." His answer surprised them because it sounded almost too simple. Yet that simplicity was exactly what made it powerful. He had learned that consistency defeats intensity. Practicing a little every day is more effective than studying for hours only once in a while. Inspired by his own progress, Daniel decided to help other learners. Every weekend, he met with a small group of beginners at the local library. They practiced introducing themselves, describing daily activities, and sharing simple stories in English. At first, everyone felt nervous, but Daniel reminded them that courage grows through action. He celebrated every sentence they spoke, no matter how simple it was. Slowly, the group changed. Shy learners began smiling. Silent students started asking questions. Fear was replaced by curiosity, and confidence grew with every conversation. Watching others improve brought Daniel even greater happiness than improving himself. He realized that knowledge becomes more valuable when it is shared. His journey had never been only about learning English. It had been about discovering patience, discipline, and self-belief. Those lessons reached far beyond language. They changed the way he approached every challenge in life. Whenever something seemed difficult, he remembered how impossible English once felt and reminded himself that persistence always creates progress. One evening, while watching the sunset, Daniel reflected on the person he used to be. He remembered the fear, the hesitation, and the endless doubts that had once controlled him. Looking at the confident person he had become, he smiled with gratitude. The transformation had not happened because he was naturally talented. It happened because he chose not to give up. Every small effort had become another step toward a brighter future. As the sky slowly turned golden, Daniel made one final promise to himself. He would continue learning, continue growing, and continue inspiring others to believe in their own potential. He understood that the journey of learning never truly ends. There is always another lesson to discover, another conversation to enjoy, and another dream to pursue. The most beautiful part of success is not reaching the destination, it is becoming the person who is capable of reaching it. With renewed determination, Daniel looked ahead with excitement, knowing that every new day would bring another opportunity to learn, improve, and help someone else discover the incredible power hidden inside consistent daily effort. As another sunrise filled the sky with light, Daniel realized that the greatest victory of his journey was not becoming better at English. The greatest victory was becoming someone who refused to give up. He remembered the days when he believed he would never speak confidently, when every mistake felt like failure and every difficult lesson made him question himself. Now those memories no longer brought sadness. Instead, they reminded him how much a person can change through patience and consistent effort. He understood that every challenge had prepared him for this moment. Every difficult conversation had taught him courage. Every forgotten word had encouraged him to learn another one. Every small success had quietly built the confidence he carried with him every day. One afternoon, Daniel received an email inviting him to attend an international workshop where participants from many countries would communicate only in English. A year earlier, he would have deleted the invitation immediately, convinced that he was not ready. This time, he smiled, accepted the invitation, and began preparing with excitement instead of fear. When the day finally arrived, he entered the room feeling nervous but determined. People from different cultures greeted one another warmly, sharing stories, ideas, and dreams. Daniel introduced himself with a confident smile and soon found himself enjoying conversations that once seemed impossible. He listened carefully, asked thoughtful questions, and spoke naturally without worrying about making every sentence perfect. By the end of the event, he had made new friends from around the world, and each conversation reminded him how far he had come. On his journey home, he looked out the train window and reflected on everything he had learned. Fluency had never been the destination. Confidence was. English had become the bridge that connected him with opportunities, friendships, and experiences he once believed were beyond his reach. That realization filled his heart with gratitude. He knew there would still be new vocabulary to learn and new expressions to understand, but he was no longer afraid of the future because he had learned how to keep improving. Progress had become part of his daily life. When Daniel returned home, he opened the notebook that had once been filled with doubts and discouraging thoughts. Instead of writing about his fears, he wrote a new message for himself: never underestimate the power of one small step. He smiled as he realized those words described his entire journey. Every day, he had taken one more step, even when the road seemed long. Those tiny steps had carried him farther than he had ever imagined. Soon, he decided to create a free community where beginners could practice speaking English without fear of judgment. His only rule was simple: everyone would encourage one another, celebrate effort, and remember that mistakes were part of learning. The community slowly grew, and every week, new learners joined with the same fears Daniel once had. As he listened to their stories, he recognized pieces of his own past in each one. He reminded them that talent is helpful, but determination is far more powerful. He encouraged them to practice a little every day, to believe in themselves, and to enjoy the learning process instead of rushing toward perfection. Watching those learners gain confidence became one of the happiest experiences of his life. He realized that success becomes even more meaningful when it inspires others. Years later, Daniel looked back and smiled at the young man who once doubted himself. If he could speak to that younger version today, he would say, "Do not be afraid of slow progress. Be afraid only of giving up." Those words became the message he shared with everyone he met. Life, like language learning, rewards those who continue moving forward despite uncertainty. Every challenge is an opportunity to become stronger. Every obstacle teaches a valuable lesson. Every day offers another chance to grow. As the evening sun disappeared beyond the horizon, Daniel felt peaceful because he understood one simple truth: dreams do not belong only to the most talented people. They belong to those who protect them with daily action. Before ending his day, he looked into the mirror and quietly said, "Tomorrow, I will learn something new." That simple promise reminded him that growth never truly ends. No matter where you begin, no matter how many mistakes you make, and no matter how long the journey takes, every word you learn, every sentence you speak, and every moment you choose courage over fear brings you closer to the person you are capable of becoming. Believe in yourself, trust the process, stay consistent, and remember that the future you dream about is built one small step, one brave decision, and one determined day at a time. Keep learning, keep believing, and keep moving forward, because your greatest success is still waiting ahead, and the next sentence you speak could be the one that changes your life forever.